Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first, once again, we're going to start with the Zaporizhzhia direction, where according to information we have, the Russians launched offensive operation. We can't tell for sure whether this is like something like the full-scale offensive or just reconnaissance in combat or attempt to maintain the gray zone and to maintain the line of combat contact by getting closer to the Ukrainian positions, let's say to escape the situation when the Ukrainians can counterattack the Russians in these directions and the Russians are unprepared. So we don't know for sure, but obviously we have some movements. We have some movements exactly from the Russian side. In this video we can see the Russian reconnaissance group that was working exactly in this area, trying to get as close as possible to the Ukrainian positions. And we also have the report that was published by neutral mappers, and according to them the Russians managed to improve their positions in fields between the city of Kamyansk, the village of Vuhledar and Hirnyk. So these fields were recaptured by the Russians as a result of counteroffensive. So once again, let's follow this area because something big most likely is going to happen here during the next few weeks. Maybe the Ukrainians are planning to attack in the direction of the city of Energodar, or the Russians are planning to attack with the purpose to encircle the Ukrainians in the city of Kurakhove. Now let's move further and let's talk about the South Donetsk direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. We have additional changes on the ground. Just yesterday we have colored these constructions under complete Ukraine control, and today the pro-Ukrainian mappers confirmed additional progress of the armored forces of Russian Federation, and according to them the Russians established complete control over this part and the Russians are getting closer and closer to the city of Vuhledar. In the northern direction, we have lots of updates from the coal mine South Donbass number 3. First of all, the pro-Ukrainian sources finally confirmed that the Russians established complete control over around 50% of the stronghold, and the rest of the stronghold is in the gray zone. And we have the video, very interesting video, and this video shows the highest point on the South Donetsk direction, and as you can see, the Russians decided to destroy this construction. The Russians are saying that when they start clearing this situation, this area, they discovered that this building was mined, and of course the Ukrainians maybe mined the building when they were retreating, trying to allow the Russians to concentrate as many as possible forces inside of this building, and maybe then the Ukrainians were planning to destroy it, but the Russians managed to destroy the explosive and they decided to do this first. Furthermore, we have additional updates from pro-Ukrainian sources, and the Ukrainians are saying that most likely they were forced to fall back from this area, to retreat to the coal mine towards more reliable positions in the vicinity and around the city and the village of Bogoyavlenka. And furthermore, we have additional report from pro-Russian sources, and pro-Russians are saying that as a result of clashes, the entire territory of the South Donbass coal mine number 3 was captured by the Russians during the previous 24 hours, and now the Russians are moving further either in the northwestern or in the western directions. Now let's move further. We have additional changes, small changes on the ground between Vadiane and Katerinovka. Pro-Ukrainian sources confirmed additional progress of the armored forces of Russian Federation, and neutral mappers are adding additional control between the village of Vadiane and the village of Konstantinovka. Now let's move further. Let's talk about the Kurakhove direction. We have small changes on the ground. According to different mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions between the village of Maximilianovka and the village of Ostre. These small fields, fortifications, territories were captured by the Russians. The Russians are trying to maintain the line of combat contact, to shorten the lines, to release additional forces that can be used in the further offensive operation in the western direction. Furthermore, we have additional report from neutral mappers that the Russians, as a result of clashes during the previous days, managed to cross the river, this one Lake River or something like the river of Lazova, and to take under control these farms. So now we have adjusted the map according to neutral mappers, and we have colored this territory as a contested area. Now let's talk about Ukrainsk. There are still very heavy clashes. There are still no updates about complete control over the territory. We've been expecting for these reports probably since the beginning of the previous week. Today we have additional progress on the ground. According to pro-Ukrainian mappers, the Russians took under control just a few blocks and a few streets and a significant number of buildings in the central part. basically the Russians blocked the Ukrainians on the territory of the landfill. Furthermore, the sources reported that not only Ukraine, the situation is getting worse and worse. A similar process are also starting in Hirnyk. This is the city to the south of Ukraine. As for Ukraine, in fact, now everything is very simple. These are rearguard battles with all consequences to the flow from this. Moreover, the battles are mostly in the western part of the city or outside the city. So the Russians currently are trying to finish the clearing operation in the city of Ukrainsk, and now the situation is getting worse and worse and worse in the city of Ukrainsk. There are very heavy clashes right now as well. But telling the truth, we received almost the same reports probably 2 weeks ago. We started receiving them almost 2 weeks ago that the Russians answered Gornyak, but yet nothing that can confirm this. Now let's move further. We have very interesting details, very interesting updates on the line between Novogrodovka and Krasnoyar. If you remember, during the previous few days, we updated the map in Ukrainian favor. We're talking about this breakthrough when the Ukrainians were trying to dig in deeper between the Russian defense lines in Zhuravka, Orlovka, and Novogrodovka. And today we got the video that was made by the forces of 25th Air Mobile Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine. And in this video, we can see the Russians that were moving in the village of Krutoy Yar. The civilian from this village tried to help the Russians to find the road, or maybe to give them understanding of the direction of where located the Ukrainian forces. So this video was made exactly in this point of the village of Krutoy Yar, which confirms Russian control at least over this territory. So we have adjusted the map, this part in Russian favor, but we still have some doubts about the rest of Krutoy Yar, and of course about the situation in the coal mine on Novogrodovska number 3rd. Now let's move further. We haven't received almost anything from the city of Toretsk. The Russians continue bombing and attacking. As you can see, the Russians for some reason stopped their offensive operation, or they were stopped by the Ukrainian forces that arrived in this direction. But probably for the previous few weeks we haven't been receiving almost anything about additional Russian progress, just small updates in the prison and small updates on the outskirts of the citadel, of the central citadel of the Toretsk. As for Chasiv Yar, nothing for the previous 12 hours. We have additional progress on the ground according to pro-Ukrainian sources in the vicinity of Sporne. Basically today the pro-Ukrainian sources confirmed that Ukrainians lost Sporne because according to updates, according to flags and maps, Sporne was captured by the Russians up to 2 weeks ago or something like this. As for the northern Kupiansk direction, we continue saying the same. The flower of Pishchana is continue blooming. Today the Russians took under control additional trenches fortifications, improving their positions along the river Voskol. So as you can see, significant territories were captured by the Russians since the beginning of the battle for Pishchane, and we see that Ukrainians can show no resistance. Now let's talk about the Kursk direction, where the Russians continue their offensive and where the Ukrainians began their own offensive operation. As you can see, we have adjustments on map. According to information we have, the Ukrainians established complete control over the village by the name of Krasnooktyabrysky. Yet we haven't received any geolocations that can confirm this, but according to different pro-Russian sources, even pro-Russian sources, this territory was captured by the Ukrainians during the previous night, and most likely the Ukrainians are planning to move further in the northern direction. We continue receiving updates from the village of Vysyoly, and this video we might see how the Ukrainian vehicles were moving along the fields and how the Russians were attacking them. This video confirms that Ukrainians managed to improve their positions, but still we haven't received anything that can confirm the Ukrainian presence on the territory of the village of Vysyoly. On the other hand, we continue receiving the videos of how the Ukrainians were bombing and attacking the Russian forces inside of this territory, which confirms Russian control and the Russian presence in this part. Furthermore, we received the video of how the Ukrainians were moving towards the village of Glushkova. This very important Ukrainian attack. In this video, we can see just a small convoy, probably 2 armored vehicles of the armored forces of Ukraine, 1 tank with two tanks, 1 tanks and 2 personal carriers. The Ukrainians were heading towards the village of Glushko, but they were ambushed by the Russian FPV drone operators, and most likely the entire group and the entire convoy was destroyed. So what is happening? Let's discuss in details once again. For some reason, the Ukrainians began offensive in the direction of Glushkova, and currently the Ukrainians haven't managed to achieve the results they managed to achieve achieved during the first days of the battle for Sudzha, and now we understand, probably it's getting clear what was the real purpose of the Russian offensive in the western flank of the Sudzha salient, of the Sudzha direction. The problem is that since the beginning of August, the Ukrainians were mainly concentrated on destroying the Russian positions along the river of Seym. So we have a lots of geolocations, a lot of videos how the Ukrainians were hunting and destroying the Russian pontoon bridges, and most likely the Ukrainians were pretty successful in this question. They destroyed almost every single bridge. The Ukrainians destroyed every single pontoon bridge, and basically the Ukrainians established complete and full control over the Russian logistic. So the Russians realized by the end of August that they have no chances to hold their positions in Kurakhove region without proper supply and support that can come just from the north due to the situation between the city of Koryneva and the village of Snagas. So the Russians made the only, let's say, decision, the only normal and reliable decision to attack on the western Ukrainian flank with a significant number of forces without counting losses, just with one purpose: to restore logistic between the city of Koryneva and the city of Kurakhove along this line. And as a result of Russian counter-offensive operation, they managed to do this. And now the Ukrainians are attacking in the northern direction without, let's say, suppressing and destroying Russian logistic. And this is the reason why the Ukrainians suffer so many losses and why they are so slow. And obviously the Ukrainian offensive from the south in the direction of Kurakhove will have no success, and the Ukrainians will be defeated until they realize this faster and will decide to save the personnel and the armored vehicles and the vehicles. As for the western flank, the Russians also, as you can see, stop. They managed to finish their main job to maintain the corridor, to maintain the line of supply, and now they don't need to move further. Maybe they will do, it depends on the situation with Ukrainian forces on the ground, but as for the previous 3 days, we haven't received anything in comparison with the first days of updates when the Russians took under control Snagas, Abukovka. After that, nothing. As you can see, no changes, no additional changes on the ground, and no additional geolocations that can confirm this. On the other hand, the Russians continue improving their positions in the northern flank. We have the videos that confirms Russian control over this salient that was, let's say, marked as contested area. The Ukrainians were FPV drone the Russian edge positions, and based on these videos, we have adjusted this part of this region under complete Russian control. Furthermore, we have additional updates from different mappers, pro-Russian mappers, about the same. We got additional geolocation from the village of Malaya Lokny that was published by the pro-Ukrainian sources. In this video, we can see a number of Ukrainian FPV drone attacks on Russian positions, which confirms that Malaya Lokny under complete Russian control, and that the Russians are still there in almost complete encirclement, but they're fighting with Ukrainians. Maybe they have a very short supply road that they use for redeployment additional forces, reinforcement, food, water, and something like this. Furthermore, we have during the previous video we have discussed the geolocations in Borky about Russian control, and today somebody managed to geolocate the exact point of the Russian soldiers on the territory of the village of Borky. In this video we can see the Russians raising the flag, and this this episode took place exactly in this point. And based on this video we have adjusted the map in Russian favor in the area of the village of Borky and Spalnaya. Furthermore, we have report that the Russians, and during their offensive operation, managed to, as a result of fast lightning attack, managed to take under control the Ukrainian air defense system. So imagine yourself, the Russians managed to take under control the Ukrainian air defense system, which confirms that basically the Ukrainians didn't expect Russian fast lightning attack, and basically they abandoned their positions and start running away in the western direction. We start receiving updates that the Russians currently are moving further in the western direction with the purpose to take under control the village of Plokhova. So this is the next target of the armored force of Russian Federation, and if they're able to do this, then it's going to be very, very big problem for the Ukrainians. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you, we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.